All right, let's do magic in the New Testament. This is from the University of Chicago. This is free online. I hope somebody will watch this and enjoy it. I'm new to making videos, so I'm hoping to get better at this. Okay, the New Testament. The New Testament authors portray Jesus as a healer and a miracle worker. Matthew, Mark, Jesus cured a man who was deaf and mute by inserting his fingers into his ears and touching saliva to his tongue. Mark 7:31 through 36. Similarly, similar similarly, he spit into the eyes of the blind or touched them with his hands. And this is in Mark chapter 8 and in Matthew 9. Even applying mud and water in John chapter 9 to restore their sight. Leprosy was also cured through Jesus' healing touch in Mark chapter 1. The simple touching of Jesus' clothes cured a woman from the hemorrhage with which she was afflicted. Oh, I love that song by Sam Cooke. There was a woman in the Bible days. She had been sick, sick so very long. When she heard about Jesus was passing by. I love that song. Oh, if I could just touch the hem on his garment, I know I'd be made whole right now. I love Sam Cooke. Okay, sorry guys. Through performative utterance, Lazarus, come out! Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. After a night of prayer, Jesus returned to his disciples' boat by walking across the water, an activity to which he also invited Peter. Skeptics, both ancient and modern, have considered Jesus' acts of healing and exorcisms as altogether similar to acts of magic. The Gospels attempt to counter charges that Jesus worked through Beelzebub. So they accuse Jesus of working through Beelzebub, okay? Superstitious mindset now. Let's. The book of Acts describes how a Pharisee named Gamaliel compared the early Jesus movement to the following attracted by a certain Theudius, who was called a sorcerer by Josephus. The 20th century historian Morton Smith compared Jesus with the miracle working healer Apollonius of Tyana, who happened to visit Persia, India, and Egypt, all lands associated with the origins of magic. Comparative healer magician figures such as Alexander of Abonutichos were not in short supply in the early Roman Empire. When Paul cured a crippled man in Lystra, ecstatic onlookers began to worship him as Hermes, a god associated in the Hellenistic world with the healing arts. Okay, let's take a stop here. The New Testament is written in Greek by Hellenistic Greeks, okay? They had a completely mythological mindset, and a lot of scholars, they don't even understand, are these stories mythology, hiding information about the inner working of the human body and the stars. Okay, this is what I have come to believe, is that the whole New Testament is not secular history, it is spiritual history, and it's a living book. Yes, the book is alive, but it's spiritual. It's not about worldly things. It's a story encoding very deep hidden truth, right? Think about the Hellenistic world, like it just said there, how they thought. That's why we see all these different themes in the New Testament that are from older stories. Okay, exorcism is mentioned throughout the New Testament. Many of the miracles performed by were acts of driving away demons, some of which caused infirmity such as blindness or deafness. According to the Gospels, Jesus was acclaimed as a banisher of spirits, even personally boasting of such abilities to the Pharisees in Luke 13:32, and he also provided the apostles with authority to drive out demons in Mark and Matthew. Jesus drove out demons from a man in Gerasa and sent them into the herd of 2,000 pigs, which subsequently rushed over a cliff and drowned in a lake. Mark chapter 5. Mary Magdalene had been freed from such tormenting spirits in Luke 8:2. Paul exercised. Oh, and let me also add, in the Essene Gospel, it talks about Jesus removing parasites from people, and they referred to these parasites as demons. And there's a story where he had one of the disciples fasting. For a long time they were fasting, and Jesus put some milk on a hot rock, and the heat made the scent of the milk come up. And out of this man, the disciple's mouth, came this disgusting, vile parasite. And they explained it like a demon. They called it a demon, but it was a parasite. And that's why they were fasting. So that's just a side note. Paul exorcised a possessed slave girl who earned money for her owners through acts of divination in Acts 16:16. After a failed, and remember, they were using this girl. Okay? And they were like, the whole situation's real sketchy. After a failed attempt to banish an evil spirit in Jesus' name, a group of Jewish exorcists in Ephesus were abused by the possessed man and sent away, naked and bleeding. Acts 19. This so scared the population that a number who had practiced sorcery brought their scrolls together and burned them publicly. Acts 19:19. And that's interesting. It's 16:16 and 19:19. A magician known as Simon, who practiced magic in Samaria, was converted after seeing and hearing of the miracles performed by the apostle Philip. Though he was subsequently accused by Peter of asking for the ability to grant people the gift of the Holy Spirit in order to make money from this power. The most well-known and perhaps most commonly misunderstood depiction of magicians in the New Testament is the episode of the so-called wise men. Remember, the Magi. They studied the stars. They understood the workings of nature and the workings of magic. From the Gospel of Matthew, these individuals, the number of which is not actually mentioned in the Bible, are never referred to as kings, as certain post-biblical traditions suggest, but are rather called magi from the east. Their arrival is based on the observance of a star, an astronomical sign within the purview of Magio expertise. Their appearance in the Gospel account is brief and appears to be a literary device used to demonstrate the acceptance of Jesus as Messiah by the pagan intellectuals. The positive depiction of the Magi who visited Jesus upon his birth can be interestingly contrasted with the prerogative portrayal of the only other individual in the New Testament who is referred to by the term Magos, a false prophet, named Bar Jesus Elimas. Acts 13. When this Magos sought to obstruct the efforts of the Christian missionaries Barnabas and Paul in Paphos, a city on the island of Cyprus, Paul called upon the hand of the Lord to bind Bar Jesus, thereby countering the magician with a spell of his own. This act of Paul's contributed directly to the success of his Barnabas's missionary efforts in the place. And next we'll read about the Eastern world and Mesopotamia. It goes into that, but it's like a battle of magic in the whole ancient times, even with the apostles. I mean, all these people, what is magic? It's really the study of the unseen world and how things function. That's why you can really call anything magic. So it's not really a good word, because it's all about what are people doing, what is their intention, Are you doing good things? Are you trying to have power? Are you just studying? Are you healing people? You can believe something and it will magically come true in your world. That is how this world works. I mean, we live in a very magical world. We can only see a little sliver of the light that's actually around us. I mean, we are surrounded by unseen things, yes. And the wonderful way that nature like mysteriously works, these invisible forces and the laws of the universe that God has set in place and holds together. You know what I'm saying? But people need to remember there's only one power. There is only one source. And the farther you get from that, it gets all flooded with all this extra. But there is one beginning and divine principle. There is one God. There is one spirit, and all spirit is connected. So, we add all these labels to things, and they become something that they're not. And we need to get back to the pure, unadulterated source of all of this, which is God. Like the pureness without, we've just added labels and confusion, and it's interesting. It's interesting to learn about. So I hope somebody